Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Online Prosperity Show, the number one place to discover real stories, real strategies, and real transformations from the people who've walked through the fire, literally, and are now helping others to do the same. I'm your host, Prosper, Taruvinga. And if you have ever struggled maybe setting boundaries, or if you've ever felt overwhelmed, burned out, or maybe just unsure of your own self-worth, then this episode is going to be for you, because today we're going to be talking about something that literally affects every part of our life, which is self-trust, sustainable growth, and learning to advocate for yourself without burning bridges or burning out. And if you're new here, just make sure you hit that subscribe button on whatever platform that you're going to be watching or listening to this from, because I promise you, this show is designed to bring exclusive conversations that could genuinely change your direction. Now, I'm really excited about today's guest, and I have the absolute pleasure of welcoming M.E.D.I.A Press to the show. And M.E.D.I.A, come on down. How are you doing today?
Hi, thank you for that introduction. It's such a pleasure to be on the show, and I'm excited for our conversation. I think that this is an area I love to work in, and it does bring a lot of value to people. So I'm excited to just dive in and see what little gold nuggets we come out with.
Absolutely. Well, before we actually sprinkle some pixie dust there, for those that are watching right now, you will notice a few Peter Pan references, and I'm not going to tell you why. Maybe you're going to discover that in the show yourself. Like I said, I'm excited for M.E.D.I.A Press. She's a founder of Coaching with M.E.D.I.A, and she's a qualified life coach who's passionate about helping people discover their self-worth, set healthy boundaries, and create their dream life. And if we have time on the call, she's going to be telling us what she is doing in the not so distant future. And that is proof positive how she's now living her dream life. So she helps people do this without rushing, forcing, or collapsing in exhaustion. But here's a twist. M.E.D.I.A wasn't always like this. She didn't always find it easy to speak up for herself. And I think that's exactly where our story begins. Now, M.E.D.I.A, tell us a little bit about your journey and what it was like, before you knew how to speak up for yourself.
Such a great question, isn't it? Because sometimes we forget what it was like beforehand as well, especially once we start to build those tools and they become really ingrained in us. But for me, beforehand was having a lot of my boundaries crossed and not even understanding what boundaries were at the time. And for me personally, that created a lot of anger and a lot of resentment in relationships. And I found that I ended up working in a job where I was the person who was brought in to advocate for other people and to help other people set their boundaries. And it gave me a lot of passion and a lot of purpose, and I could see a lot of value in that. But then when I left that job and I was in a position where I actually needed to advocate for myself and I needed to set boundaries for myself, there wasn't anyone to come in and save me and to do it for me. And so I really had to learn, what are my boundaries? How do I stand up for myself? How do I self-advocate for myself when I'm the person to do that for me? And I went from being an angry victim and feeling pushed around by life, and from feeling like I was never allowed to speak up and say anything for fear of hurting other people's feelings or causing a problem, to being someone that could really stand on my own 2 feet and do that in a really healthy way as well. And it's a journey, and it does take time. And I think the thing that was really key for me along that journey was having good support systems in place. And so at the time I had an amazing coach, I had a fantastic therapist, I had a really supportive partner. And if I didn't have those people in my corner backing me, helping me move through emotions, helping me work out all those little niggly bits of life until we sort of get to this is where my boundaries are and this is how I want to show up, it would have been a lot harder. And so through that, I really want to be that person for other people. And support systems are just such a underrated part of our life. We get people who go, oh, I don't need support. Oh, I'm independent. Or I only need support for this one little thing that's happening. And we're human. We need people around us to lift us up, to remind us who we are, to back us when things are really, really hard. And so that's, I guess, my journey of how I went from someone who had no boundaries to being a life coach who wants to be that person for other people and to help support other people and to back them when they're feeling a little bit, I guess, beaten down by life as well and want to start making those shifts.
And thank you so much for taking us on that sort of journey. And obviously you started us off with, the job that you were doing, helping others, figure out their own boundaries. But maybe I want to take us back a little bit to, if you're okay with this, to just paint a picture of what young Molly was like. Did you maybe grow up in a space where boundaries were spoken about but never, exercised, or what was the upbringing like?
Yeah, I've reflected on this a lot as I've worked out my boundaries. And so for me, I didn't understand what boundaries were growing up. I just had no idea. So they weren't really talked about. It wasn't really discussed. And I do remember times where I had tried to set boundaries without realizing that that's what I was doing. And I was told things like, oh, but everyone reacts like that. You're just being silly. You're being overreactive. You're being too sensitive. And so I was essentially through that taught to people please and taught that if someone else is acting in a way that doesn't feel good for me, that I don't really appreciate being treated like that. I just need to suck it up because it's me being sensitive and it's me being emotional. And that was really hard for me growing up because I did end up in some situations where if I'd had boundaries, I would have walked away from crappy jobs earlier and, things like that, and friendships that weren't working for me. And it's given me a lot to reflect on, a lot to understand around. I did try to set boundaries in those times. I just didn't understand that's what I was doing. And it wasn't like boundaries was not talked about and values were not talked about, to the point that it wasn't until a couple of years ago when I actually went, I really want to learn to understand my boundaries. I really want to stand up for myself, that I had to actually sit down and find out what boundaries meant and what values meant. And so that was in my late 20s that I actually started to understand that for myself, because I think many of us are just not taught about that growing up. It's not discussed. And we almost have this system in place, a social system where your parents always have boundaries in place. They have rules, they have things that you aren't allowed to do. And we get so used to showing up to that. And then you go into a workplace and it's very similar. And whilst those things are all valid, your parents are trying to protect you and bring you up a certain way. You go into a workplace, you obviously need to really adhere to the rules and the regulations of the workplace. We're not taught to look at, does this work for me? Does this make me feel good? Is this actually draining me and burning me out? And is there something that's out of alignment here? We're just sort of taught to, I guess, accept everyone else's boundaries and never understand our own. And that was really interesting for me to start to learn about that and understand that as well.
Now, obviously, you've raised an interesting point here that it was up until age 20 where you found meaning, or you gave meaning to the words boundaries. Now, I've got a 7-year-old and 11-year-old by the time we're recording this, and during the weekend, they were playing in the living room where they put like blankets around the room and created a fort for themselves. Now, were they creating boundaries for themselves there, or were they just playing as kids?
Interesting question. Now, I don't have a psychology degree, so there could be some different answers out there. But I guess it could
Maybe
really
you
be
can
seen
start
as
from
both ways.
maybe you can start from what are boundaries?
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, boundaries are understanding what behavior is accepted and who we want to let into certain areas of our lives, and then being able to hold that within ourselves internally, but also externally. So being able to say, hey, actually, I don't really appreciate being spoken to like that. Sorry, no, I'm not available for that. Understanding if there's certain people that I guess are trying to maybe, it's a good example, friendships that are coming in. So someone's really trying to come in, they want to create a friendship with you, but for you, that person's actually not feeling like a good person to have in your world. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but sometimes it's understanding for us, what are the people that we want to have around us? How do we want to be treated? What will we accept and what won't we accept? And what do we want to prioritize in our lives? And so boundaries can also look like, sorry, I don't have time for this thing at the moment because I'm putting a lot of energy and effort into something else that's really important to me at the moment. And bringing that in with creating like a pillow fort with your daughters, I'm thinking of it as it could just be play, but also, was there a password to go into the pillow fort? Was it certain people could come in at certain times? And maybe that is a way of children playing and starting to learn boundaries. And then also, how are they received? Were they accepted? Oh, yes, we're going to do the password to come in. Oh, Dad, you can't come in right now. We're having girl time. And, they could be little tiny boundaries that maybe they're starting to experience through play as well, which is really interesting concept to think about.
Absolutely. And the reason why I brought that up is, like you said, we're not brought up to understand what those are, but there's ways that people have or can be creating boundaries, and they don't have, the language for it to then be able to define what that actually means. Now, with that being said, doesn't society sort of frown upon people that have created their own safe space? Because if that was the case, then so many of the things that happen in life wouldn't be happening if people actually respected other people's boundaries.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a big one. So what I talk to people about as well is there's two sides of learning about boundaries. One of it is learning what our boundaries are and how to set them. The other side of that is, can we also accept other people's boundaries when they give us a boundary? And can we respectively say, okay, yeah, no worries, I understand that. Thank you for letting me know. Or are we still going to experience rejection? And that can be something that's really interesting to think about as well, because a lot of the time people look at setting their own boundaries and don't think about, how am I responding when someone else sets a boundary to me as well? And it is something in society that it's not spoken about and it's not really accepted. If someone has hard boundaries, oh, they're really rigid, they're really strict, oh, they never go out and do anything because of this, they never invite me into their home. And sometimes there's a reason for that. And I think we can judge a lot of what other people do, and we want other people to respond to us in the exact same way that we would respond to them. But we're all a little bit different. And it's having those nuances of just being human. And can you respect that there are some differences with people, and that some people have different boundaries and different ways of showing up in a relationship than what you do? And it's the same when we don't think about it always as friendships, but we think about it in partnerships and in intimate relationships. If you're going to live together, most of the time in relationships, you'll have a melding of worlds. And you won't just come in and expect that everything's going to be the way that you think it is. You're going to learn, well, how does my partner like to cook dinner? How do they like to do the cleaning? How do they like to spend their evenings? And you start to create a world together from that. And I think that's a similar thing with boundaries and with learning about friendships, is that same thing of we're all very unique and we're all very human, and respecting when someone else has a boundary, but also understanding that that's okay too. And maybe they just operate a little bit differently, or maybe they have different values and different boundaries to what we have.
I like that. And obviously, with that being said, there's another word that you threw into the mix, which was values. And I think, like you said, not a lot of people are taught that growing up. Maybe you care to give us some sort of a definition to what you call values and how I can see them if they walk past me in the street?
Yeah, it's a good question. For me, values are, what are the things that are really important in life, the things that I get really passionate about, the things that feel non-negotiable to me, the things that I want to spend a lot of time, energy, finances, whatever that looks like, on. And when sometimes a good key is, again, like with that anger and that frustration can show us sometimes, if we have a value and someone else has something that's totally opposite to that, we're getting a little bit frustrated and feeling like we have to defend that topic because we're so passionate about it. And for us, it is a non-negotiable. And that's really showing you where your values are. So for me, I have really strong values around the community. And so I will put time and money aside to do donations and go on walks that raise money and do these little things, purposely get things in my business like business cards and t-shirts from small local businesses. For someone else, they may have a different value around that. Their value could be finances. And so maybe they're going to places that are the cheapest for them. Maybe they're not outsourcing their money in the same way because for them, they really value having a lot of finances close to home, or they value spending their money in other areas. And it's really looking at a great tool and technique that you can do is going through different areas of your life and looking at the top 5 things. Some of the questions are things like, what do I talk about consistently on a daily basis? What do I think about? Where do I spend my money? Where do I spend my time and my energy? And having a look at what is showing up constantly across those areas in your life. And that will show you a little bit about where your values are as well if you're not sure. And the other thing is that I think is really cool to think about is that our values can change with the seasons that we're in. And so like yourself as a parent, you'd have a different value on the time that you spend with your children and what your family unit looks like now while they're young compared to when they're in their 30s and they're no longer living at home. And those things will change and shift a little bit. And it happens for all of us. So just check in with ourselves. What do I value right now? Where are my priorities at? What are those things that are so important to me that I want to put more time and energy and effort into?
So from what you're saying, obviously, the moment you actually figure out these are my values, these are my boundaries, it really makes it easy for people to relate to you and for you to relate to other people, because so many people are just butting themselves into places where either they don't fit in, then they don't understand why, or bringing people in that don't fit in and they don't understand why they constantly are either being triggered or things of that nature. Maybe you can comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a really good point that you've made, that connection is that when we have people in our lives sometimes and we go, oh, I'm feeling really drained by this friendship. I'm getting frustrated when I talk to this person because they keep seeing things through a perspective that I don't agree with, or, whatever that is. If we can understand what our values are, we can go and create relationships and friendships and, even workplaces that really align with these are our values. And a lot of the time our values will be linked in with our purpose as well. And we can live these lives that are really purpose-filled and have these people around us that we get to engage with our values and really understand that. And for me, it was a key thing. Understanding my values made my boundaries a lot easier because I suddenly understood what was non-negotiable for me and just suddenly understood what was really at the core for me that I wanted to protect and have boundaries around. And so for me, those two things are so interconnected in everything we do in life.
You see what happens is, so many of us, like you said, are brought up in that scenario, and society also shuns upon people that have chosen to value whatever they value or put boundaries in place, because we're supposed to go at it together as society. And if you start shutting other people out, they label it discrimination. They label it certain words that then will start infringing on your values. Now, for you, was there a specific moment where you realized, I got to learn this so that you can literally balance this and nobody's coming to rescue? Because if you look outside, like I've mentioned, society is only going to society the way societies.
There was a very distinct moment. And I think there was probably a couple, but the first one that comes to mind is I was in the medical system with some particular things that I was dealing with at the time. And we're very taught that when you walk in, you see a doctor, you just take on what they say, whether you agree with it or whether you don't, and you go away and you do that thing. And for a lot of the times that can work. Like, doctors are trained to give advice in certain areas. But what I found for me is that the advice that I was being given and what I was being told wasn't aligning with me. It wasn't aligning with my values. It wasn't aligning with what I thought was best for me to be able to heal and recover. And so I came home and I went, I'm really uncomfortable with this. Feel like I'm not supposed to ask questions and I'm just supposed to do what I've been told to do. But I really don't feel good about it in my body. Like, I feel a little bit sick in my stomach. I feel tight in my chest. I'm really uncomfortable and I need more information. And I chose that moment to go, well, why can't I stand up for myself? Why can't I go back in and ask questions? Why can't I go back in and seek more information? And why can't I go back in and, have an open discussion to say, I'm feeling really uncomfortable about this. Can you give me more information? Can you help me understand a little bit better? And as it turned out, I ended up seeking a different doctor who was fantastic. And I got someone who was a lot more supportive in the space that I was in. But it was one of those moments of what we've been talking about. Society tells us that a particular scenario is supposed to look one way. And it was difficult for me at the time to push up against that because I'd never been taught that I was allowed to do that. And you can do that very respectfully. You don't need to go in and be horrible to someone or be aggressive. You can be very respectful and you can go in and say, hey, I don't know if this is working for me. Can I have more information? Can I ask some more questions? Can you please help me understand what this is that you want me to do? And that can also be having boundaries and standing up for ourselves and having self-advocacy. It can just be asking questions so that we can make informed decisions about our lives and where we want to go with that. I think we have this idea sometimes that setting boundaries and standing up for ourselves is always going to cause friction and it's always going to be hard and difficult and it's going to break down relationships. Whereas it can be as simple as knowing what your needs are and being able to voice them and being able to actually have a healthy conversation around that. And then I guess you take the information from that as feedback. Is this working for me? Do I want to do the things that have been suggested? Is this person able to meet me in the conversation and respect my boundaries or answer my questions or just have a discussion with me as well? And so it doesn't always have to be It might still be hard, but it doesn't always have to be horrible. It can actually deepen relationships a lot more and deepen support systems a lot more, whilst also deepening our understanding of ourselves in that moment.
Absolutely. You know what I like about what you just raised there is so many of us just take whatever information, advice, or suggestions just because somebody is in a position of authority. And if that is at least infringing on our values and our boundaries, and I also am sensing a bit of beliefs in there as well in the language that we're using in this conversation. Now, I still want to go back to how society has sort of been tuned in order to ignore these values and boundaries, because you walk around any suburb in Australia, everybody's talking about should be all right, mate. Or everybody's talking about you don't want to be that tall poppy, you know what I mean? That whole tall poppy syndrome. I know I've just combined a couple of things, but I just wanted to bring about how society really has it baked into its being that people go blind on infringing on other people's boundaries, and not a lot of people would go out of their way to want to learn. And I don't know if you can comment on that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think firstly, I just want to say that it's not to say that you always have to question. It's not to say that you always have to push back, but it's knowing how you feel about a situation and knowing what you need in that situation. Maybe they've given you everything that you need. Maybe you have, in the medical, maybe you have a fantastic doctor and you do just trust what they say. And that is also perfectly fine. It's not to say that you have to question everything, especially, in authority and things like that. But it is to say, can you understand what's going on for you? Can you drop in to know what your needs are, what your body is telling you is right and wrong for you? And I think in society, it's just bit of a product of the way that society has changed and modernized. We know that we have had different systems in society where, women didn't have the vote for a long time and men got to have the say. And those things can be demonized in a lot of ways, but it is just the way that society has matured and changed over time. And part of that is that a lot of people have been taught to not even necessarily suppress their needs, but just not to understand their own needs. We're taught to put everyone else first as parents, as partners, as caregivers. And there's absolutely an element of that where you are putting other people first in certain situations. But it's balancing that with, can you also honor yourself in that situation as well? And I think a key thing that we're not taught is to have self-worth. And that's a big thing that comes into this conversation as well. When we talk about values and needs and boundaries, if we don't have self-worth and we don't have self-trust, we're not going to put ourselves first because we're not going to think that we're worthy of that. And I'm not sure how in society we did get to that point, but you see it and it's very clear in the way that a lot of people act. Like, so many people come to me as a coach who have no self-worth, who are stuck in people pleasing. The reality is it's just a common thing that a lot of people are dealing with. And we're in a bit of a time and age now where, younger children are being taught more about boundaries. They are being taught more about how to stand up for themselves. But there's a lot of us that are in our 20s, 30s and older who weren't taught those things and are starting to come back to that. But yeah, self-worth, I think society has not necessarily taught us to put ourselves first and to be worthy of ourselves. And you'll see it everywhere. You'll see it in adverts, you'll see it in marketing. Like, it's the way of the world, right? There's a problem and we can fix it with this product. It's a really easy way to look at it. But yeah, there's so many people I talk to that just lack self-worth. And it's really daunting to me to have these amazing people sit in front of me and they can see their passion and they can see what they bring to the table and how much worth they have. And then trying to help them see it as well, so that they can follow through on creating the life that they dream of. And being able to do that is to trust yourself to follow through on actions. It is to be able to set boundaries when it's needed. It is to say no when it's needed, to be able to create this beautiful life that every one of us deserves to have.
And thank you so much for that. You see, when everything is happening around you, it becomes a norm, and it's always been like that. So, which then begs to say, fish don't literally see that they're swimming in water. They just think, if you ask them, they think they're walking on land like we are as well. And if you tell fish that, oh, wait a minute, you could actually use your feet, they'll be like, what? So that then says a lot of people might not realize maybe when their boundaries have been infringed upon or crossed. Maybe let's specifically walk with you if you're comfortable with this. What did it feel like emotionally when your boundaries were crossed, and how did that sort of anger show up in your life, so that maybe somebody might see themselves in how you responded to all of this?
Yeah. So for me, it was that like stone and fire in my stomach of I'm feeling angry, and I can feel it in my body. I'm feeling tense in my shoulders. I'm feeling yucky in my stomach and a little bit unsettled, and I'm feeling like I want to lash out because something's upset me. I'm not entirely sure exactly what that looks like. And it did look like, me coming home and wanting to rant for 3 hours about this thing that someone had done or had said, or something that had upset me. And that energy that I was spending being angry for hours and hours, and then, potentially seeing that person again, having some of that come back up. I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to go. I'm already frustrated going into the situation because what if they say something again? I realized it was so much wasted energy. Like, it was draining me all the time. And we hear that a lot with these things. But for me, I had chronic fatigue, and it was just draining on that as well. And so what I really learned is when I started to put myself first, I started to set those boundaries, and I started with really little things as well. And I practiced in places that I thought would be a little bit safer, that I thought would have some less consequences. Like, you can do that as well. Practice with it, play with it, be curious. Like we were talking about your daughters before, bring playfulness into it. It's just like building a pillow fort and seeing what happens. Just start to experiment in little ways that do feel accessible to you. They may not feel comfortable, but they feel accessible, that you can step into. And the difference is that then, instead of coming home and being angry for hours on end and, potentially ruining the people's night that I live with because they've got to listen to me be angry for hours, and I'm sort of, just wasting all this energy, I could just sort of step in and say, hey, I didn't really like that. Or I'm going to remove myself from this situation because I actually don't want to be here. This is not making me feel good, and I'm just going to leave. And even just the knowledge when I very first started, before I had the courage to say something, just the knowledge of being able to go, oh, instead of sitting here and just going on and on and on about this thing, can I reflect? Where was the boundary so that I can understand for next time? Great. I've got that bit of information. I know there was a boundary that was crossed. I can now think about, instead of sitting here being angry, I can think about, well, what would I like to do differently next time? Would I like to say something? What might I like to say? And I might have spent, 20 minutes on that instead of 3 hours being angry. And I come out with that self-awareness. I come out feeling like I have a little bit more knowledge around this tool of setting boundaries, and I have something that I'm going to play with, be curious about, and I'm going to give it a go next time. And so it was building that up for myself and actually starting to build that tool and that reflection to know what that looked like for me.
Absolutely. So you also did mention, obviously you had people around you, like, therapy, coaching, and you also had some sort of a support system that helped you move, from all this reactive anger to now grounded, sort of self advocacy? And if somebody doesn't have access to that, how can people self regulate?
Yeah. So it's an interesting thing that you've brought up, because a big part of one of my values is affordability is accessibility. And
Right.
so we can't always afford to pay for the coaches and pay for the therapists. And, you know, a lot of the time when things are not going well in life and we really need support, we don't always have finances to book that. And so it is having a look at, is there someone that you feel that you can reach out to and talk to? Do you have a friend? Do you have a family member? Do you have a space that you can go into? Is there someone that is offering coaching or therapy? Some people do, you know, donation days, pay what you can sessions, have different payment plans and things. And so it's thinking about, what sort of support are you looking for? Is there a book that you can go borrow from the library that you can start to read about? And there's different levels of support out there. It's not necessarily just paying for a coach or a therapist. It's who's in my life that I feel comfortable going to have a conversation with about this, that might be able to help me talk through what I'm feeling so that I can understand it better myself. And we do now. We have podcasts, we have YouTube, we have, like, libraries still exist. We can go borrow free books. We can buy books for ourselves, and we can highlight all of the sections and note all the pages at work. We can look at different coaches and different spaces. And the beauty of social media is that you can follow people as well, and you can just get their free content and just be hearing that discussion happening around you as well, so that you can start thinking about it. So there's so many different ways to build support systems. But my belief is that support systems need to be aligned for you. So go and explore and see what actually works for you in a particular season of your life. And when different things happen, that support system may change a little bit depending on what's going on and what support that you need. But being able to go and explore and try to find support that works really well for you. You might even join some social groups where you may not necessarily be going there to talk about, challenges that you're having, but you may just be building really good relationships. And that can be a form of support as well. So it's really looking at, what do I need? What's in my community? What's accessible to me? And what kind of support might just make me feel a little bit better at the moment? What might make me feel like I can open up a little bit, or that I can just exhale a little bit as well?
Absolutely. You see, with what you're saying, obviously information changes situations, all right? Like if you start knowing certain things, you now know your boundaries, your values, you start seeing things in a whole different light and things of that nature. But some people might think boundary setting might just make you a very difficult person or selfish, to be around. What would you say to that?
I think it really comes back to the self-worth. Like if you're in a coaching session, would then look at, well, why do you think that's selfish? Where is that belief coming from? Is it your view of what you think that boundary should be is actually selfish? And can we look for a different boundary in there that's not, that actually works really well for you? A lot of the time, we do think that boundaries are selfish because we're not used to putting ourselves first. It's so unfamiliar. And we're used to having to be selfless all the time with putting everyone else first. And it's just that unfamiliarity of, I'm actually going to do something for me. I'm actually going to put myself first. And I think that unfamiliarity at times for people, they do view it as, oh, what if I'm selfish? And that's something that it can really need to be worked through sometimes. And sometimes it's also just giving it a go and seeing how you feel once you try it. Can you give yourself 10 minutes that you just do something for you to give it a go and see how that feels? There's most of the time, boundaries are not selfish. Sometimes we can be really rigid in them, and sometimes we can maybe limit ourselves depending on our boundaries. And that's where it can be good to, come in and check in. Like we said, seasons of life change. Is this boundary still working for me? Oh, I can see that I'm starting to feel that this boundary feels a little rigid. Maybe I'm just going to reflect on, do I still want to set that? Is that still working for me at this season in life? But yeah, most of the time feeling selfish about that is just not used to putting yourself first.
So obviously when you start talking about putting yourself first, then that's like personal branding, celebrating yourself, high-fiving yourself, and all the words that people use. Oh, he's got tickets on himself and things of that nature. Why do you reckon people really resist celebrating when they've actually achieved something? Especially because it's very difficult to go above the norm. And the only way you can anchor a feeling or a thing is to literally celebrate that so that it stays within you. But there's no way I could go into a restaurant right now and order myself the biggest steak. And if they ask me what's the occasion, and I tell them, I just want some boundaries and now I know my values. They'll call people on me, Molly. I don't know. They'll call people to see if I need some help.
I can say I love that you brought this up because I love teaching people to celebrate themselves. And it's so, like you said, it's so linked in with self-worth. We really anchor that feeling in, and it's taking a moment to, whether that looks like going out and buying yourself a massive steak or getting yourself a little Peter Pan trinket, or just taking 5 minutes to go, I did that thing and I'm going to feel proud of it. And I'm going to just take a minute to go, yeah, I did that. I'm going to fist pump in the car, or whatever it is. It's really building up that self-worth of, I can put myself first. I can feel proud of doing the things that I'm doing for myself. And I think a lot of the time when people go, oh, you've just got tickets on yourself, or you're being arrogant about that, it's probably because for them it's uncomfortable because they haven't been taught to do it. That's, like, again, it's what we're taught by society. And when we're uncomfortable with something and it's unfamiliar to us, we've been taught to judge it negatively. And that may happen. You may go out to a steak restaurant and tell them, I've just set boundaries for the first time and I'm really proud of myself. And they may react really weirdly. I can absolutely say that I have gone out, and if someone says to me, oh, is this a special occasion? I will be quite honest and I will say, yeah, I just handed in an assignment. Yeah, I just, did something for myself and I'm really proud of it. I just did something really hard and I'm proud of that. I set boundaries for the first time. I just learned about this and I'm really proud of myself. And when you have that energy and that passion, a lot of the time people will kind of go, oh, yeah, good work. Even if they don't understand it, like, they are customer service if we're talking about a restaurant. They're taught to be polite. But you're still then planting the seed in their heads as well. Maybe I should feel proud of myself if I do that. Maybe I should buy myself a big steak if I do that. And celebrating is something that's actually really, really hard for people. And I love teaching people this. And it's something that I really, really try to advocate for, is because it builds self-trust. It gives us a moment to go, I wanted to do this and I did it. And that builds up our self-trust in ourselves. It shows us our value. I showed up to my values. I set my boundaries. I have worth in this situation. And I'm noticing that because I put myself first. And there is so much that happens when people have self-worth. And that was what I learned when I started to set boundaries and stand up for myself, is my self-worth grew. And I didn't realize how much it had gone down at the time. And when I started to really have that self-worth, I worried a lot less about what other people thought, because I was more worried about the people that I had in my life, what I was doing for myself. And I stopped worrying about how other people were going to judge me in that. If they thought that it was ridiculous, that's fine. They can go find someone else to hang out with. I'm good. I have my self-worth. I've got my values. I'm bringing in the people that align with me. And all of that fills me up so much that I don't need to worry about what that other person is judging me for. And it's a lot easier said than done, especially if some of those people are, people that were close to us or are in family units that, maybe they're not just out of our lives at that point. But it does get a lot easier as you build your self-worth, and it does get a lot easier as you do those little things like celebrating yourself and taking that moment to really drop in. And I had a client once that was so unused to having the spotlight on themselves. They were like, I couldn't celebrate myself. I couldn't reward myself for this. And so I made it really playful for them. And I said, can you just go to the mirror and go, you did it? And they cracked up laughing. And I was like, that feeling right there is all we're going for. It doesn't have to be, you don't have to spend a lot of money. You don't have to take a lot of time. You just need to acknowledge yourself and know that you are worthy of doing that thing, and you're worthy of continuing to do the things that bring you joy.
Molly, I think you've just given all of us so much permission right now. In life, obviously, there's more to celebrate than there is to worry about, because half of the things we worry about never happen. But the things we actually celebrate are the things that have actually happened. And so if you really look at it that way, there's more to celebrate. So for those that are watching right now, I want to high five you for all the successes you've had in your past and all the successes you are about to embark on. And if you've ever struggled to celebrate your own wins, maybe type in the comments self-trust in the comments, and maybe Molly can give you a pointer or two. And obviously, so that we can help each other as we grow. Now, you did mention the spotlight, and I've just been listening to you. I don't think we've even started the show, but maybe we can use what we have right now. You speak so well. You're confident in the way that you present yourself, and everything is so well articulated. I usually write a lot of notes because I'm confused, but right now I'm just listening. Somebody might be watching and listening to this right now, Molly, and saying, oh my God, I could never speak like she does. I could never have that confidence, or I would never, look that way or appear that way. But for you, it was never like this before, right? You also once hated public speaking and, walking into rooms and things like that. But now you're on panels, you're on podcasts, you're on the Online Prosperity Show. What was that internal shift that made that possible?
You're absolutely right. I struggled. And so I do remember I moved interstate, and for the first, I think, 3 months that I lived there, I went to the same grocery store every week to my groceries. And every time I went to walk into that grocery store, I would call my mum or my grandma to talk to me on the way in, because I didn't know the layout of the grocery store yet. And I was so anxious about looking silly or looking lost in the grocery store. So I made sure I was on the phone when I walked in, so that it just looked like I was distracted if I couldn't find something. I used to have so much social anxiety about these things. And it was one of those, I guess, bonus domino effects of learning my self-worth and learning to self-advocate, that I started to just notice that lesson for me. And I started to be able to push my comfort zone and do new things. And it didn't start with just jumping on a podcast, but it did start with these little ways of pushing my comfort zone and going, well, this is the life I want to have. I've now built up these tools. I know my self-worth. I've learned my values. I know my boundaries. I know how to stand up for myself. I don't have things standing in the way of me going after the life that I want, except me, if I choose to get back in my own way. And so I started to go out and do things like study coaching, and I started to go out and do these different things. And through that, I found these opportunities to push my comfort zone. And because I'd built up that self-worth and that self-trust, every time I went to push my comfort zone, I could lean into that very consciously and go, I trust myself to just show up here. I trust myself to just give it a go. I know that it's not that big of a deal and everyone else is giving it a go too. And I could really start to believe that, because I had built up that self-worth. And so through that, that just grew into me playing and experimenting and exploring those things and going. The first thing was I walked into a networking group. And I had never been to networking. I didn't know what it was. I had to YouTube, what is networking? What do people talk about at a networking event? Like, I had no idea how to start a business. And I walked into the first group and I just stood there like a deer in headlights. And someone came up and spoke to me, and I was like, okay, this is fine. Someone's approached me. I can relax and talk. And then they walked away. And I remember walking into the bathroom and looking at myself in the mirror, and I was like, just say hello. That's it. You don't have to say anything else. Just say hello and someone will respond to you. And so that's what I did. I just picked the first person in the room and I walked up and I very awkwardly went, hi, and just stood there. And when they started to respond to me and the conversation started to flow, I went, oh, it wasn't actually so scary. I can do that again next time. And I went to the next networking event and I felt a little bit more comfortable. And now, 12 months later, I've been on panels at these networking events. I'm the person that rocks up early and goes up to other people that look really scared and like they're new and say, hey, how are you? What's your name? I'm Molly. And I sort of fill in some conversation for them so they can start to get comfortable in that. And it is just learning to trust yourself in those moments, which comes with all the things that we've been talking about, and learning to, I think, just treat everything with a little bit of curiosity and playfulness. Like, we don't have to be perfect the first time. It's okay to just give things a go and see what happens. And that is what's really given me the confidence to sit in a coaching seat, to run a business, and to come onto podcasts and talk about these things, because I know how much it changes your life when you do have your values and your self-trust in there, and you can just lean into yourself to follow through on things.
Yeah, I like that. And if somebody's watching this right now and just leaning in, just, wondering how can I get this kind of help or this kind of support, or somebody like yourself in my corner, where on the internet could they go and maybe explore what it looks like to work with you, and what can they expect?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm what's called a life coach. And so we do work through all different challenges that are coming up in someone's life, essentially looking at where are you now, where do you want to be, and whatever challenges are in your way to get there. So I have a website. It's www.coachingwithmolly.com.au, because I'm in Australia. I have a YouTube channel, Coaching with Molly, as well. I'm on Instagram under the same name, coaching.with.molly. And that's the areas that you can find me at the moment. And you'll see most of my stuff is purple. I do have, like, my whole website will be purple. That will come through in all my logos and everything. So you will be able to very quickly see that it's mine. But I do have different videos on there where I talk about these things, and I have little snippets that I talk about. I do different one-on-one coaching as well as group coaching, and I'm looking at running some workshops and retreats coming up this year as well. So all that information will be predominantly on my website, but also through Instagram as well.
Fantastic. Now, Molly, obviously, when we started, I hinted on, the Peter Pan, stuff that you enjoy the most. And I actually find it fascinating because Peter Pan is about flying, all right, from the little knowledge that I have. And your work is about helping people release those anchors that are stopping them to fly, but not necessarily escaping what is in front of them or escaping reality, by literally grounding themselves into self-worth first. Now, did you notice the connection between who you are and what it is that you do? Because sometimes the things we end up collecting are usually the things we end up becoming.
I had not realized that, actually, and I love the way you just put that all together. I think that's really fun. And so my thing that I love about Peter Pan was always that idea of never growing up. And for me, that's not staying as a child forever, like literally like they do in Peter Pan, but it's about having that childlike joy. It's about tapping into that. It's about bringing playfulness and curiosity in, so that the life that you have gives you that joy, that pure childlike joy that I think sometimes we lose as we get older and different responsibilities come in. And I love the way that you've just put that in with flying, because it is really, how can we spread our wings? How can we sprinkle a little bit of pixie dust and release the things that are weighing us down so that we can be more uplifted in life as well? And Yeah, it's interesting now. I think I'm going to look at my Peter Pan collection with a whole different lens.
I'm glad you received that. So, from what you've also said, I kind of believe that you literally are giving people back to themselves and they already have all of this inside of them. All you're just doing is without using the AI words, but you're literally unlocking that from them and you're allowing them to be, do, and have a happier existence. And what I've just learned from all of this is obviously sustainable growth beats a lot of urgency that a lot of people have. And if you've got the right support systems, you would actually be able to thrive. So, some people are being thwarted in their growth just simply because of the environment that they are in. So, before we wrap up, tell us about your goal setting group coaching program. Who's it for? And what sort of transformation can people expect in this?
Yeah, absolutely. So it is all about creating that life that you want to have. And whilst it is based around a lot of goal setting, it is, like you said, it's about creating that sustainability. And so, what I've learned from working with people and from my own experiences is that we goal set just to get to the end. We goal set just to get to a destination. And a lot of the times, people will put all their energy into one thing that they're goal setting, and then they'll reach that destination and they'll go put all their energy into something else. And a lot of the times people burn out through trying to do that. And so what we look at in my program is, do your goals align with your values? Do you know what your values are? Do you know why these things are important to you and how they're creating the life that you want to have, how they're impacting you, how they're bringing more joy and beauty into your life? Can you celebrate yourself along the way, not just at the destination? On the journey and all those seemingly little steps that actually can be quite big to get there. And can we do that really sustainably at your own pace so that it's not looking like you burning out, you rushing to get to a destination and then just moving past it, but you actually creating this life that you want and being able to balance all those things that you value whilst also reaching the goals to continue to create and expand in the way that you want to. And so that's really what my goal setting program is doing. It's also going to be brought into, like I said, like the workshops and the retreats, which will be around creating your ideal life. And I love it. I love seeing the way those little light bulb moments go off for people when they're in the program. I love hearing the feedback for it and just seeing the way that people have really shifted into celebrating themselves, into creating these goals that are actually getting them to where they want to be, as opposed to quitting halfway or burning out before the end. It makes such a huge difference.
Absolutely. Well, I think when people show up, you'll be asking them, would you like an adventure now or should we have tea first? And with the way that it's all going, it does sound like it is an amazing adventure. So I'll definitely put all those links in the show notes so that people can actually get started on their journey. Now, Molly, the what does Peter Pan say? The second star to the right and straight till the
Right on till
morning.
morning.
What's next? What are we seeing in the morning? What are you working on that we can be excited about? You brought us into your world. Now you got to serve us with the niceness that you've got coming up. What's next?
Absolutely. So next is organising the retreats that I've been working about. It's going into community centres and holding workshops, which I'll probably also hold online as well. Um, I'm looking at doing a video series with a coach and dear friend of mine, which will be on my YouTube, and you'll just get to hear us talk about different things that we've gone through, very much like this, with building self-trust in ourselves and other topics. Um, and it's really just continuing to be in the community and in an online space where I can lift people up and bring them into more harmony within themselves and within their lives. So that's where that's at the moment. I've also just finished my Tai Chi certificate, and so I will be bringing Tai Chi into some of these retreat spaces and community centres as well, so that we can do all the mental work and also get the body involved as well, and just have a little bit of a play with that as well. So there's some really cool elements that I think are coming together that are in my passion areas with coaching and with Tai Chi, and really bringing through these beautiful spaces where people are going to be able to come to retreats, meet each other, and start to really build their dream lives as well.
Connect with your body, because I thought that was now for those that didn't respect your boundaries. You know, there will be Tai Chi, you know. Fantastic. Now, Molly, I can't thank you enough for the time that you spent on the call today. I mean, your life story and your experience have so much value to those that are listening right now. And I'm sure those that have been listening and watching can't wait to maybe jump on a call or have that tea with you so they can explore you know, how far they can go with all of this. And yeah, I can't wait to see what people are going to do with all this information.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for today. It's been amazing to have this conversation. I love to talk about these things. And yeah, I'll look forward to seeing where it leads next.
Absolutely. And for those that are watching right now, you've realized that all you need is faith, trust, and a little pixie dust. Oh, no. It's boundaries and values that will actually make your whole existence a memorable one. So if this episode resonated with you, and maybe you've been running on overwhelm, doubting your worth, or just maybe struggling to speak up, this is your moment. And maybe this was the shift or the sign that you were waiting for. I encourage you to sit with yourself and find ways to, you know, start looking at those boundaries and those values. And if you got what you needed from this, share this episode with somebody who needs to hear that they're actually allowed to take up space. You know, they don't have to keep cocooning themselves. Those days are over. And while you're at it, subscribe to the Online Prosperity Show, because in the next episode, we're going to be diving into ideas that will help you create not just success in your business, but also happier existence. And Molly, thank you once again for reminding us that, hey, sometimes flying just starts with learning how to stand. And when you can stand up for yourself, for your values and your boundaries, then you've got a good enough runway to actually, you know, be able to, lift yourself up. So until next time, I want you to own your growth, honor your pace, and also remember, hey, support isn't weakness. It's actual wisdom. Until next time, bye for now.